Today we are going to be solving quadratic equations. We did discuss this a little bit last chapter. We discussed that the solutions of a quadratic equation are its x-intercepts. They are called either the roots of the equations or the zeros of the function. So in example 1, we are actually going to be solving to get the solutions by graphing. So on this first one, I have x squared minus 4 equals 0. The important thing here is before you can start to solve it, it always has to be equal to 0. Since we are trying to find the x-intercepts, y there would always be equal to 0, so that's why we put in 0 there. So to graph these, just like last chapter, we're going to find the axis of symmetry with negative b over 2a. Since this doesn't have a b, our axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 0. So my x equals 0 line is going to be my axis of symmetry. Remember from the last section, that your vertex will always be on the axis of symmetry. So when we do our t-chart, I'm going to put in that, and I do 0 squared minus 4 gives me 0, negative 4 as my vertex point. Since a is positive, I know this is going to be opening up. I'm then going to sub in 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. So 2, 0 is my next point that I'm going to use. And then I'm going to sub in, and I just picked random numbers, I'm going to sub in 3 next. 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 4 is 5. So 3, 5 is my next point. Remember then to get the other side, you do go across the axis of symmetry the same distance. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then you connect it, and remember that a quadratic function is always a parabola. And then we know that our solutions are the x-intercepts. So if we look here, we cross the x-axis in 2 places, so that means I'm going to have 2 solutions. My solutions look like they are x equals 2 and x equals negative 2. And then you want to check your answers. To check it, you sub it into the original. 2 squared minus 4, does that equal 0? 2 squared is 4, 4 minus 4 is 0. 0 equals 0, so positive 2 checks out. Then you check out the second solution, negative 2. So we have negative 2 squared minus 4, does that equal 0? Negative 2 squared is 4, 4 minus 4 again is 0, does equal 0, so both of those check out, and those are my 2 solutions. Our next one is actually the parent quadratic function, because it's just x squared equals 0. Again, to graph, you are going to find the axis of symmetry. Negative b over 2a, I don't have a b, so I know my axis of symmetry again is going to be 0. Doing that again, let's see if we'll just leave it like that and move it. So there's my axis of symmetry. I know my vertex point is going to be on that. So if I plug in 0, 0 squared is 0. I'm also going to use 1. 1 squared is 1. So my first point was 0, 0. It's going to open up because a is positive. 1, 1 is my second point. And I'm going to plug in 2. 2 squared is 4. So 2 squared is 4. And then I get my other side by using that axis of symmetry. And then I connect my points. Okay, to get the solution then, remember it's where it crosses the x-axis. This crosses it only at one point, so this time I only have one solution. My solution here looks like it is x equals 0. We check it. If we plug it into the original, is 0 squared equal to 0? Yes, 0 equals 0, so our solution is correct. We have 2 more examples down below of graphing. So if I look at this next one, again, the axis of symmetry. I don't have a b, so again, my axis of symmetry is going to be at 0. go. So there's my axis of symmetry. My vertex is going to be on that, so the first thing I'm going to plug in is 0. 0 squared plus 4 is 4, so 0, 4 is my first point. That's my vertex. It's opening up, so that actually is the minimum or the bottom of the parabola. 1 squared is 1, 1 plus 4 is 5, so 1, 5 is my next point. And then 2 squared is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8, so 2, 8 is my next point. I go ahead and use my axis of symmetry there. And I graph my parabola. To get my solutions, then remember it's where it crosses the x-axis. This parabola never crosses the x-axis. So that means this has no solutions. Since it has no solutions, there's no way to check that besides looking at the graph and making sure it doesn't not cross the x-axis. Okay, our last example here. Again, find the axis of symmetry. There's no b, so my axis of symmetry again is going to be at 0. Then I need to get my 3 points to plot. The vertex is going to be at 0. 0 squared. Oh, I got to do something first here. I totally messed you guys up. Before we can solve, what does this have to be equal to? It has to be equal to 0, so don't make the same mistake I made. So I need to move this negative 16 by adding 16 to both sides. So the equation I'm actually graphing is x squared, this goes to 0, equals 0. So basically I am graphing the exact same one we did right above this one. So my points were 0, 0, 1, 1, because 1 squared equals 1, and 2 squared equals 4. So again, use my mistake and learn from it. In order to graph to get the solutions or to ever solve for solutions, it always has to be equal to 0 first. So do that first before you start solving. So 1, 1, and 2, 4. And like I said, this one's going to be the exact same answer that we got of the one right above it, because when we set it equal to 0, it's x squared equals 0. Okay, so this crosses the x-axis at one place. That means you have one solution of x equals 0. If I sub it in to check it, I always check it into the original. So x squared, so 0 squared minus 16, does that equal negative 16? 0 squared is 0, so negative 16 equals negative 16. That's correct. So our solution is correct. Go ahead and turn your page. We have 2 more examples to look at. Our next example is solving using square roots. So basically you are just solving it and getting x by itself. So this is just solving an equation like we did before. So the opposite of minus 98 is to add 98 to both sides. Those cancel out. I'm left with 2x squared equals 98. The opposite of times 2 is to divide by 2. I get x squared equals 49. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root. So I end up with x equals the square root of 49. Remember, a square root problem always has 2 answers, both the positive and the negative. So my answer here would be x equals 7 or x equals negative 7, because both of those squared give you 49. It wants us to check our solutions. So these are our solutions that we have. This time we have 2 solutions, so that means if we were to graph it, it would cross the axis, the x-axis at 2 places. If we check it, we plug it into the original. 2 times 7 squared minus 98, does that equal 0? Yes, 0 does equal 0 when I put it in my calculator, so it is correct. If I check negative 7, remember, be cautious when you put this in your calculator. You have to put negative 7 in parentheses, squared minus 98 equals 0. And if I put that in my calculator, I do end up with 0 equals 0. So negative 7 are my 2 solutions that work. The last one here is your real world problem solving for this one. A city is planning a circular duck pond for a new park. The depth of the pond will be 4 feet and volume will be 20,000 cubic feet. Find the radius of the pond to the nearest tenth of a foot. So basically it's a circular pond, and from the side view it would look something like this. The pond goes down. Okay. The shape here that we are using, and I'm going to put the shape of the base is a circle. And in order to find volume, you always find the area of the base times the height of the object. So if I look here, the area of my base we said is a circle. The area formula for a circle is pi times radius squared. So that's the area of my base times our height. So that's my formula. Now I sub in what I know and I solve for the radius. So up here it told me the volume was 20,000 pi, radius is what we're looking for, times height, which was given to me because the depth there would represent the height of 4 feet. And now I need to go ahead and solve. So the opposite of times 4 pi is to divide by 4 pi. The pi's cancel out, the 4's cancel out. The opposite of squaring something then is to take the square root. So in your calculator you would put the following. The square root of 20,000 divided by parentheses 4 times pi, and I would use your pi symbol, close your parentheses, close them again, equals. And then it says you're going to round that answer to the nearest tenth. So to the nearest tenth, that would be approximately, and I should change that symbol there, 39.9 feet. And since that was a story problem, I should write my answer in statement form. So it asks for the radius of the pond. The radius of the pond is approximately 39.9 feet. Let me make that smaller so that we can see everything. Oh, that's really small. And there we go. And that is your final answer. Go ahead and complete your quick checks and then look at your schedule for your assignment.